David Schwartz explains liquidity. Folks, I am so excited to make this video, and listening back on what David just dropped for us in a XRP community Twitter space the other day, I am so thankful that he was able to explain this and confirm and kind of vindicate how we had been understanding liquidity value versus market cap. And he's going to explain liquidity very well here. I'm going to play this clip. It's about 5 minutes or so, and I'm going to share my thoughts on it. But I just love to get this type of confirmation because it confirms to us that we're not crazy, for one, talking about XRP playing a role as a reserve currency, but two, also the way that we're thinking about market cap versus a liquidity value, right? Which is how many of the tokens do you have? What is the price of them? How quickly can you turn them over and reuse them? And this equation is different from market cap, right? This is what I've coined as liquidity value. David Schwartz explains it so perfectly, and it just goes to show that we are directly over the target. Let's listen in on this one, folks. Huge shout out to MetaMan here for clipping this one up and putting it together. And he asked David the question, and he also does make a couple other interesting points here. Listen in.
Thank you. In the past, I believe you stated that XRP cannot be cheap. What did you mean by that? Did you mean like dollar amounts? And also, and before you answer that, let me just throw this other question. What happened to Naveen Gupta? I don't know if this question was answered already. Like all of a sudden, like this whole thing back to back with Chris Larson, and then Naveen Gupta stepped down, from managing director of South Asia. And then,
Yeah, I'm sad to see him go. Yeah.
yeah, man. I mean, yeah.
People only stay in one place for so long. I mean, it's always kind of sad when people go, and it's also nice to see former Ripplers like being successful elsewhere, and it helps us to have connections with other companies. We have somebody who's worked here, run into someone who I used to know at Ripple, and they're working at some other company, and they sort of spread.
Are you referring to people like a Robbie Mitchnick that leave Ripple to go be head of digital assets at BlackRock? Is that the type of relationships that we might be talking about, right? Former Ripplers that are still just one phone call away, happy to still have a partnership going on? You betcha.
Good things about Ripple. So I guess that's the nice thing. As far as what I meant, so there's a specific quote that kind of annoying to me because it's been repeated by many people taking out of context.
Like
but
me.
let me be, yeah. So to be very clear about what I was saying in the quote that I was talking about, the cost of XRP doesn't directly impact the cost of a payment. So in other words, if I want to buy something from you and the value of that thing is, let's say it's the equivalent to $1 million US. Like the amount of XRP, the price of XRP is going to determine if I'm going to pay you an XRP. The price of XRP will determine how much XRP I have to give you, but it won't make the payment any cheaper or more expensive, right? If the price of XRP is very high, I'll give you fewer XRP, but it'll cost me more to get them. And if the price is low, I'll have to give you a lot of XRP, but I paid less for each one. So there's no such thing as like cheap XRP making payments cheap or expensive XRP making payments expensive. And that's the point that I was trying to make there, that the price of XRP doesn't determine whether payments are cheap or expensive. But what does happen is, in general, the higher the sort of market cap of the asset, it's not so much the price per unit, but the market cap does impact the ability to use the asset for payment. So for example, let's say I wanted to buy a house that was worth $1 million USD and I wanted to use Bitcoin to do it, right? Back when Bitcoin was like $100, you couldn't realistically use Bitcoin to pay $1 million because the market didn't have enough liquidity. Like if I wanted to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin back then, I would have pushed the price up. And then when I gave the $1 million worth of Bitcoin to you, let's say to buy your house, when you go to sell those, you would push the price down. So you would take a loss on the buy and I would take a loss on the sell, and that would make the payment suck for both of us. But today, I can buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin without moving the market, and you can sell $1 million worth of Bitcoin without moving the market. So the higher, it's not so much the price, it's more the market cap, but really it's not quite like a higher price tends to mean a higher market cap, and a higher market cap tends to mean higher liquidity. It's really more like the sort of availability of liquidity that determines how easily you can use an asset for payments.
In the term that we use is liquidity value, right? How much available liquidity do you have? That's the liquidity value. It's similar to market cap, but there's a couple different variables that you have to add in, right? How quickly can you turn over the coins that you have in, he's about to go in describing closed loops versus open loops for payments. Listen in.
When you don't have closed loops. Obviously, if you have closed loops of the assets, we'd all love to see everyone in the Bitcoin space and the XRP space and the Ether space. If you see it for payments, you want to see closed loops. Like I want to get paid in XRP. I want to pay my landlord in XRP. I want to pay my electric bill in XRP. Then I'm happy to receive. Then we don't, then it doesn't matter what liquidity there is because you're strictly in the asset. But in the short term, before you can get to those closed loops, you're going to have open loops. Like maybe I can get Ripple to pay me in XRP, but then I can hold, and maybe I really like holding XRP. Let's say I love holding XRP. So yeah, I'd like Ripple to pay me in XRP, so I'm holding XRP as soon as Ripple pays me. But then when I have to pay, for groceries, my grocery store is not going to take XRP yet. So I have an open loop, and I need some liquidity in order to be able to buy my groceries. Now, if my groceries, if there's not a lot of liquidity and it's very difficult for me to convert my XRP into dollars, then that open loop system doesn't work. And so so the price of XRP doesn't matter to this, right? Ripple might pay me more or less XRP. I might need more or less to pay my bills, but it doesn't matter. The system works just as well. A cheap XRP isn't meaningful there. But what is meaningful is how expensive or how much it cost me to sort of convert. And especially for big payments, like if you want to make $1 million payment, it has to be that $1 million buy or sell of XRP doesn't move the market a lot, because if you move the market, it's always going to be against you, right? Moving the market always means it's going to cost you more to buy, or you're going to get less when you sell. So if you're moving the market, it's going to effectively a tax. So what I was saying in that quote is that the XRP being low in price doesn't make it better for payments. In fact, it probably leads to a smaller market cap and less liquidity, which makes it worse for payments. And you can see as the Bitcoin ecosystem has grown, Bitcoin has become better and better for payments. And the irony is people are using it less and less, but it's not because it's not suitable for payments. I have to say, one of the things that perplexes me the most about this space is that people are not using digital assets for payments, even though they work for payments better than they ever have. And that's just that's not any one particular. Obviously, there's some reason. Bitcoin, you might argue, well, the transaction fees, it's kind of slow. Ethereum, you might argue, well, payments it's a little expensive, it's a little slow. But even other blockchains that are fast, not just the XRP ledger, they've not gotten as much traction as I would like to see them get in the payment space. And that's the problem that Ripple has been working the hardest to solve for, since 2015, when we decided to focus on payments. We've been trying to sort of get, payments into the cryptocurrency space. And it's still baffling to me that we haven't been more, that nobody in this space has been more successful than they have. Obviously, I wouldn't say that we've been unsuccessful, but it's just baffling to me that there isn't broader adoption. Like, why aren't people using cryptocurrencies for remittances more than they?
So this is why I tweeted out here today, so many people misconstruing what David said, right? He didn't say that they've been unsuccessful with payments. It's just that's one of the most difficult markets to tap into, right? You got politics, you got regulations, and you got incumbents that are like, what do you guys have to offer here that's different from what we already are working with? And what David mentions here is that as Bitcoin's grown to a market cap, right? I forget where it's at right now, hundreds of billions of dollars. At one time, it was over 1 trillion, right? It's very efficient. There's plenty of liquidity. Now, of course, the fees and the network are slower than other blockchains, but we don't have the availability to move the higher volumes that we're exploring and maybe shooting for, right? In the XRP community, we go all the way from talking about all the money to talking about cross-border payments, divvying it up into derivatives, all these different markets. And, for example, I was just looking this morning in our Discord weekly call, we were talking about the AMMs and comparing the Stellar AMM versus the XRP Ledger AMM. And I was looking at the top trading pairs on the AMM for Stellar, and the XLM USDC one has the most amount of liquidity, but the volume was still only about 50,000 in the last 24 hours. And so just to reiterate the point, right, when XRP is cheap, you can still send an efficient payment. When XRP is expensive, you can still spend and use it as a cheap, efficient payment, of course. but you're going to have limited bandwidth. You're going to have limited liquidity value, and that's liquidity that is available at any one given time. And the challenge I believe that Ripple's had is that these institutions and money service providers haven't had clarity on being able to hold the digital assets, and they haven't had an appetite to hold them, even if they do have regulatory clarity. Where I see this growing is the amount of people that are going to be willing to hold the asset, that are going to treat XRP, crazies like me that treat it as a reserve currency, and then just others that are willing to hold it on their balance sheet because they get utility out of it when they need it, right? When they want liquidity, they can source it. And also they're willing to hold on to it as well. This is where I really start. Look at Bitcoin as example. He's saying how the market cap's been growing and it's actually better now for payments than when it was at $100 for a Bitcoin, but now less and less people are using it for payments, right? I don't think that we're going to have that same problem with XRP. And I think that you're going to see the amount of liquidity coming to this ledger, I think is going to far outpace most. Is it going to get the biggest share of the pie? That's yet to be seen. I've made my bets, and I know that you guys have made yours, but it was so nice to see David pop in for the community. And you mentioned this, after the historical ruling from Judge Torres on July 13th, that XRP in and of itself was not a security. Where did Brad Grindhouse go right after that news dropped? He went to the Twitter spaces with the XRP community. And that's what I'm talking about. And David Schwartz, what is he doing at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, we found out that he's actually in Dubai, which is why he was still up. But he's hopping into a Twitter space with the XRP community. And so, very, very amazing to see, not just Brad, but David as well, and the rest of the team at Ripple being so open, being so willing. Just last week, I had Mayuka from Ripple X coming on to my Twitter space to help explain the AMM, help explain EVM, help explain XLS40D. So, we've had Neil Hartner on, multiple Ripple employees coming into our Twitter spaces to educate the community. This is what we're talking about, right? And we're just in the right direction with a massive amount of momentum behind us. As I've been saying, there's a few reasons why I'm still bullish on XRP. We got that legal clarity. We're finally getting DeFi. And now we just reported on it last night. If you missed the live show, make sure you guys go check it out. Ripple is going to be going live with their partners in the United States finally. So I know people are leaving the party. I think they're leaving a little bit too early, and we're about to turn this thing up. Let me know in the comments down below. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.